once again to another edition of Good Books, underwritten by audiobooks.com. Try one today for free. I'm your host this week, Dr. John Cook, and with me today is Ms. Pam Allen. She is a world-renowned literacy expert, author, and motivational speaker. She's the founding director of Lit World, a global literacy initiative serving children across the U.S. and in more than 60 countries, and Lit Life, a cutting-edge consulting group working with schools to enrich best practice teaching methods and building curriculum for reading and writing. With her team at Lit World, Pam created and leads World Read Aloud Day, a worldwide tribute to the power of literacy that happens every March. Pam received the 2013 Scholastic Literacy Champion Award and is the global ambassador for Scholastic's Open a World of Possible campaign. She's a spokesperson for BIC Kids and championed BIC's 2014 Fight for Your Right, that's WRITE, Fight for Your Right campaign. She was selected as a mentor for the 2013 Bush Institute's Women's Initiative Fellowship to help young Egyptian women develop leadership skills. She was chosen as an inaugural W.K. Kellogg Foundation Fellow in 2014, becoming a part of a national cohort of 20 fellows focusing on racial healing and equality. She is on the advisory boards of the Amherst Center for Community Engagement, James Patterson's Read Kiddo Read, and Pearson Foundation's We Give Books and the Millennium Cities Initiative social sector. Pam is the author of many books, including Your Child's Writing Life, winner of a Mom's Choice Award, What to Read When, the books and stories to read with your child and all the best times to read them, and winner of the National Parenting Magazine Award, Pam Allen's Best Books for Boys, How to Engage Boys in Reading in Ways That Will Change Their Lives. She's also contributed to Complete Year Series at Scholastic and Homework Pages for Independent Reading, also Scholastic publication. Among other titles, her most recent series, Core Ready, published in 2013, is a 14-book series focusing on the Common Core learning standards. Pam is featured widely in the press and blogosphere as a reading expert for both home and school. She's been seen most recently on NBC News, CNN, Al Jazeera, speaking to the power of education and literacy to transform lives and create gender equity. Her work has been featured in Good Morning America, The Today Show, The Oprah Show, The Huffington Post, The New York Times, and now the most popular show in Brownsville, Good Books Radio. I should say all throughout the Rio Grande Valley. We are in Brownsville at the University of Texas at Brownsville, and literacy is an important topic to all of us. This program's a little different because we're looking at all books instead of one particular book. And this effort that you have going called Open a World of Possible is an initiative that I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about it, really proud to be part of it, and I thank you so much for having me on today. Basically, Scholastic is launching this initiative. It's being launched this month, and it is really designed to invite everybody in to celebrate, to honor, to cherish, and also to advance the power of reading for pleasure for every child, and every adult, really, to get access to books that we love, to make sure that we make time for reading in each and every day, and really that idea that reading is not just about putting words on a page or reading words on a screen, but actually it's also about what kinds of worlds reading opens up to all of us, whether it's the world of fantasy where we can just escape for a little while, or it's a world of information where we can get what we need when we need it. So it's a great initiative. We're inviting everybody to join us in sharing stories of when reading has opened worlds of possible for you by hashtagging share possible, hashtag share possible on Twitter and Facebook, and also by coming to the scholastic.com website at scholastic.com /world of possible, and just hearing all these stories and sharing some of your own. So it's a great time to celebrate reading in the new 21st century era, and that's what Scholastic is really all about.
You know, this initiative to get more kids to read in particular is of interest to me because I think a lot of kids miss out on that, and reading aloud to children is such an important part of child rearing from my own experience. But you mentioned in the research on some of the information that I found there that children who read for pleasure make more progress in math, vocabulary, and spelling than those who rarely read.
Yes.
And between the ages of 10 and 16, readers scored higher on all three tests than their non-reading peers.
Absolutely. I mean, the research is just staggering. I think sometimes as parents and as educators, we're a little bit skeptical of things that seem like too much fun, for our kids. So we think, well, if it's fun, it probably can't be what makes them academically successful or what, is going to have them, score so well on all those tests. But actually, it is true that even in other ways too, like a new study came out last year that showed that a child who's read aloud to every day, and it can be anything, it doesn't even matter what the book is, it does significantly better academically in school than children who are not read aloud to every day. Similarly, another study came out that showed us that that a child who has even one book of the child's own choice in the home is also inclined to do better academically in school. So these are just amazing statistics, but for some reason, I think sometimes we don't equate reading for pleasure with academic outcomes, but actually there is a really close tie-in.
Yeah, I did see something that interested me was that about reading fiction enhances understanding of others, builds empathy, improves interpersonal understanding in politics and business and education. So I didn't know that
Yes.
all those Dr. Seuss books my mom read me were going to do that for me. But
no, it's true. Actually, that was one of the best studies I've read in the recent last 2 years. Is that idea that reading fiction makes you a nicer person. I think this is something when teachers ask me about like anti-bullying programs, and they'll say, "What curriculums do you recommend?" Because schools will often ask me those questions, and honestly, I'll say to them, let's rally teachers around the idea of really putting great books in kids' hands and reading aloud every day from wonderful books, because that's the best way to build empathy, really, of all.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the state of reading in our country now, because one of the stats that I saw was that 26% of students read below the basic level. They don't have sufficient reading ability to understand and learn from the text at their grade level. What is
Yes.
Is it the lack of reading that drives that?
Honestly, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I actually think the Scholastic campaign is really important, is because what I see in my travels, and I do a lot of speaking and visiting of school districts around the country, is that when I'm especially in the most high poverty areas of our country, where we see these very, very dismal, very low performing outcomes for our students as readers, I see the least amount of books in those schools. I see the least amount of access, and I mean, let it be online, let it be on the phone. I don't even care where they're getting the access or how, but that what I see is there's a direct correlation between those low-performing outcomes, high poverty, and lack of access to text. And when I say text, I mean not just those old textbooks sitting in your closet, but I mean the kinds of books that kids cannot put down. And to me, that's so severely concerning, because it does seem like a simple idea, but if in the areas where we do see those staggering statistics, and they're really not getting any better, we've been sort of flat for years around reading scores, significantly flat, and we've gone through, there have been several changes and innovations and this and that, but at the end of the day, if the child does not have access to books that will build that child's stamina, build that child's comprehension, and get that child excited about what it means to fall through the words and into the story, we're still at square one. And I really think that is a very big issue. And then the second thing is, I think that all the kids really, really, really crave, actually, is role models. Kids really love, they are very inspired by mentors, and we need our teachers, our parents, we need everybody in the community to rally around the idea that everyone can be a reading role model. And when most of what we're talking about is, you've got to finish taking that test, or you've got to prepare for that other homework, and really at the end of the day, what I want adults to be talking to kids about is, why do you read, and what makes you love it? And if you don't love it, what helps you get through the struggle? Because we're using reading every day. We're using it for so many reasons and so many purposes, and yet we don't really talk to our kids about that. We make up a lot of different things that happen in school that actually do not relate to what's going to make them lifelong readers. So I think one is lack of access to the books kids really want, and two is that we've stopped talking about what's important about reading. And I think that that's where this initiative around World of Possible is meant to say, let's start that conversation up again. Let's let our kids see us as people who read for you read for, like you said, you read to build empathy, you read for passion, you read because you can't put it down. I mean, I take trains and planes every week, and I'm so grateful that I can read. Besides the fact that I love it, it also helps me navigate the world. And I think it's what frustrates me is, I think especially in our high poverty areas, I think we've overdone it. We've gone so far over the top in terms of test preparation that we've forgotten that in order for kids to do well on those tests, they got to be lifelong readers, you know? And how are we going to make that happen?
Well, speaking of cultural issues, boys still lag behind girls in valuing reading. So more girls are inclined to think reading is important than boys. Why is there that sex difference?
Yeah, there's actually quite a significant difference. I wrote a book a few years ago called Best Books for Boys, and I went around the country and I interviewed boys on why, what their feelings were about reading, what was their perspective. And it was really interesting to me. I mean, some of the more startling results that I uncovered, one was that the boys have a perception, and this is actually fairly accurate, that because most of their teachers are women, the teachers will tend to choose the quote, the books in the canon tend to be books by women about girls. So in a fifth grade class, what I started to look at was how many times across the year is your read aloud, a book about a girl by a woman, and that boys were looking for more diversity both in the titles and the topics. The second thing is, I think that there is a perception, and I think we perpetuate this in our culture, that when boys do things, it has to be active and mobile, that even if you're playing a video game, you're leaning forward and you're click, click, click on the button. And whereas girls, it's more societally acceptable for them to be sitting and seated and not moving while they're doing something. And this is very true. And so the boys kind of come to say to me, you know what, Mrs. Allen, what we think is that it's very uncool to read. Like, to be seen as a reader means I'm a nerd, whereas when the girls in my class read, they're seen as being really smart. And so part of that is really we have to make sure that, one, we encourage more men to go into the teaching profession. Number two, that men at home, as fathers, uncles, grandfathers, become more actively engaged with their kids around reading, that your job as a dad is not just to take your kid out in the backyard and throw a softball or baseball around, although we love that you do that, and we hope women do that too, but that we really hope that you will sit down and take a minute to read to your child, because we want them to see boys reading. We want them to see men reading. And then finally, the third thing is how we value reading. Like I think women tend to think of reading as, and I'm, again, very overgeneralized here, but when we describe reading, and the boys said this a lot to me too, we think it means a novel, it means a chapter book, whereas boys say, if I don't think what I'm doing is really reading, and they'll describe, reading a video game manual or reading a comic book, and we have to redefine what we mean by reading, because I think boys feel very left out, and when you feel left out, you just don't want to you kind of don't want to do it. So the boys, yes, I think there's a lot of gender bias in teaching. I think that we can't help it. We are a 95% all-female population of adults in classrooms, but I think we could do better, and I think that we can do better as educators, but I also think any men in anywhere, anybody listening, as a man, say to yourself, what could I do in the next year to read in a way that a boy will be impacted by my presence as a reader?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, let's talk a little bit about Scholastic. Scholastic is the world's largest publisher and distributor of children's books, and I'm not sure everybody's familiar with them. They have a global presence.
Oh, wow. Well, they're an amazing, amazing company. The mission, it's a very mission-driven company, and has always produced a very high-quality children's literature, but was one of the, I think probably the only publishing company in the world that really transcends home and school. In other words, children in the home will have access to Scholastic materials that will help them learn to read and play and learn at home, and then they can go to school, and there are book clubs and book fairs and lots of prizes and fun things that Scholastic does to make reading in school not only fun but really purposeful. And so everybody probably knows Scholastic for being the legendary publisher of Harry Potter and also the Hunger Games. But what people might not know also about Scholastic is that Scholastic publishes thousands more titles a year, and they're really extremely well regarded in the field. In fact, yesterday the National Book Award finalists were announced, and out of, I think, 4 finalists for young adult novels, or not novels only, but young adult text, Scholastic, I think, had 2 of those finalist nominees. So they're both fun for kids and the kind of reading that kids grasp for, but also very well revered in the education world as being the kinds of books that people will want to put in their kids' hands to make sure that the outcomes are good. And Scholastic has always been committed to this one of the many things I very much admire about the company is it's very committed to making sure equal access, that all children get access to books they love. And as a result, I think that was really also, very an inspiring part of this campaign, but really to make sure that everyone gets to share their stories about reading and how reading can matter for them in their lives. But it's a pretty amazing company, and I am extremely proud to be able to represent this initiative on behalf of one of the very few, I think, companies in the world that really, it always leads with the child. It's very special.
They do have a good first quarter fiscal report on their earnings, so they must be doing well, and I appreciate the equity and education efforts. But I did not know until I looked at the corporate website the long-term disaster response to Hurricane Sandy, putting a million new books in the schools and public libraries from those areas that suffered devastation from Sandy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so amazing about them. They're always out there right in front, always. I mean, they did the same thing with Hurricane Katrina. There were so many libraries that were absolutely devastated in those storms, and it's something people don't often think about, but this is where children are getting their main source of inspiration, and Scholastic has always been really out in front on really exemplifying the kind of model that you kind of dream of in the American democracy, where it's a family-run company where the founder set a very strong vision. His son, Dick Robinson, has been running the company for many years and led that vision to expand it to become a real global entity. And it just sets a very strong vision for what I think I wish more American companies were like, where they never stop thinking about what their role is in society and what they can do to better and further and enhance the lives of children, no matter what their zip code, and also the fact that they do go between home and school, which I think is also really unique. Like some of these other publishers, you may see them in the classroom, you may never see them in the home, whereas people look at that Scholastic logo and get that very warm feeling that I know that this is a trusted companion for my child, that I know if I provide this book to my child, that's going to feel good for them, but also it's going to be good for them. And I think that's just it's so unique, really. But they have done really amazing things for so many kids, and I think I would say that the same is true for teachers also, that it's another way. It's a very unique company in the sense that it provides a lot of support for teachers through training and through products and through developing relationships with schools. And so they really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in education as well.
Well, we mentioned the American presence at every zip code, but they have a global presence, don't they? They're in 13 countries and they reach 150 plus around the world.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, one of the things that we can always be grateful for here is that we are kind of like, this is the golden age of children's literature, but in many parts of the world, children's literature is a really new idea, that there, haven't been historically a lot of books written or printed or published specifically meant and designed for children in many parts of the world. So it's kind of a new concept, and Scholastic, again, is right at the forefront of bringing those books, of creating books that are culturally very relevant and sensitive and appropriate for the communities within which the children are experiencing the pleasure and joy of those books. And then also that as a global company, Scholastic is really promoting the message, that open a world of possible message, that what reading does and what learning does for people of all ages is to say that, yes, we live in our local community, but there's a big world around us, and we're going to use reading and literacy as a way to not only to learn, to open that world to myself so I can see something else, but also so that I can be heard too, that little child who is, reading The Snowy Day or reading the Clifford book or reading, Harry Potter in one part of the world can look up for a minute and just smile and say, hey, a kid from all the way on the other side of the world might be reading something like this right now, and maybe one day soon we can have a conversation about it. And I think that feeling of Scholastic as uniting children from around the world around the power of reading is something that I think there's a lot of excitement about globally. And for myself, I do a lot of global work, and I can say that probably the most important thing we can be doing right now is asking the question, how can we make quality children's literature more accessible in more parts of the world in ways that feel both culturally relevant and also really inspiring? And that's exactly the question that Scholastic is answering.
Great. So the Possible Fund, how is that going to get used, the Scholastic Possible Fund?
Well, as you said, Scholastic already has been doing so much. I mean, it's always been one of the core values of the company is to make sure kids do get the books they need and want. And so the Possible Fund is really going to be a next step from that, and really just going to continue that story, make it grow, encourage everybody to be part of seeing all the simple ways we can make sure every kid has a book in the hand, and I know that that's kind of an evolving and wonderful story that I think is going to be told over these next years. So the Share Possible hashtag, I think, is going to be a great way for this conversation. It already is. People are already chattering all over about it, and I think to create what we're calling the Open a World of Possible movement, I think the Possible Fund will fit into that, and I'm excited to hear how that's all going to be unfolding. But I have no doubt that because it's the value of Scholastic already, that it's just going to be more and more exciting. So I would love for people to come to the scholastic.com website and make sure to stay closely connected. The great entertainment giant Usher is doing a launch of the Open a World of Possible initiative on November 6th, and it's in a live webcast, and so everybody is welcome to come on there onto the Scholastic site, sign up, free registration for teachers, for parents, for kids, and I know they'll be telling more of this World of Possible story then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Usher next. I'm glad you brought him into the picture there. If the goal is to help students have a more joyful, engaged feeling about reading and learning, is there something that individuals can do to help contribute to the global effort that Scholastic's putting on?
Oh, wow, that's a very nice question. I don't know the answer to yet, although I'm sure there's going to be plenty to do, and I will take that question back to the folks at Scholastic, because I know they're always talking about ways to get everyone just super involved. I know for right now they're really interested in having everybody collect their own stories and really of reading and the power of reading, and have that be our step one. But I have a feeling there are going to be plenty more steps to come where everybody can, really be involved in a lot of different ways. And I think, one of the things I'll say for right now is that I think Scholastic, like if tomorrow or today, anybody listening out there takes an action, Open a World of Possible action, and lets us know on the hashtag or just come to the Scholastic site, is that's an action, to say I read with a child today, or, I was listening to the show and I'm a guy and I didn't think about this, but I'm going to read to my nephew to make sure that he sees a guy reading. These are all things that will help us make this initiative feel really powerful, and I think there's going to be plenty more that everyone can do as we get things rolling. So definitely to stay in touch with us, and be part of that with us.
And what do you look forward to accomplishing in the next year yourself with regard to this?
Well, a couple of things. One is in regard to the initiative is I just want to get out there. I want to be able to invite as many people as possible into this movement. I want to make sure we get a lot of kids talking about what reading means to them, and really make sure that schools and superintendents, teachers, and parents are giving kids time to read for pleasure every day. If we could say at the end of this year that, every school district in the United States and every family at home made a commitment to have their kids really read for pleasure 20 minutes a day, I would feel so, 10 minutes in school, 10 minutes out of school. It doesn't even have to be that much time. I would just be so thrilled, because that's really, for my work as a literacy advocate, that's really my vision, is to really get the power of reading where children have choice to read, where they have reading role models, where they have all kinds of opportunity for that kind of reading. I want my role to be that advocate. I want to make sure that we get that reading experience into the classroom and into the home. Kids are rushing around. They're very stressed in school. I would say from my point of view, my dream and my work and my role with Scholastic as the ambassador is to make sure that we really value that 20 minutes a day, and make it matter and create that safe space around it and give kids the books they want to read.
Terrific. We've been talking with Pam Allen, who's a world-renowned literacy expert and the global ambassador for Scholastic's initiative, Open a World of Possible campaign. Of course, on a show like Good Books Radio, we want everybody reading, and we hope that this interview has given you some ideas on how you can continue to contribute to our community through reading. I'm your host, Dr. John Cook. I remind you, if you don't hear our show on the 4 times we broadcast every week, you can catch us on YouTube at Good Books Radio, Strong and Cook. Thanks for listening. Make it a great day.